From WHYY, it is Hittin season. Hey there, podcast pals. I'm John Stolnis from The Good Phight. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at John Stolnis. Coming up, we're going to recap this World Series, talk a little bit about the insanity of Game 7, and, as Phillies fans, how we felt watching it, the Jeff Hoffman connection, but just, watching what happened to the Toronto Blue Jays fans 32 years after they did it to us. We'll get into all that stuff coming up here on the podcast. Free agency is now officially underway with the World Series over. So we'll do a little free agency preview, potential targets that the Phillies could be going after. We'll talk about some of their own free agents, but we're really going to kind of do talk about some specific players here in free agency the Phillies could pursue. And the award finalists were announced on Monday night, and some Phillies were prominently mentioned, and we'll get into that as well. Joining me on the roundtable, Justin Klugh and Liz Roscher. Elizabeth Roscher is the editor of SABR's Baseball Research Journal. You can follow her on X and Blue Sky at Liz Roscher. Liz, how are you feeling? How's it going? Hello.
Pretty good. Recovery from that World Series game was tough, but I was fine the next day. That was quite a game.
Yeah, because you weren't rooting for either team. So, the rest of all of us in the other 29 cities that house baseball teams, we were able to recover.
Well, I'll say this. We were hoping the Blue Jays would win because they were an underdog and because the Dodgers won it last year. And I don't want a repeat winner unless it's the Phillies. That's the only repeat winner I care about. So I was really hoping the Dodgers would buff this one, but...
Yeah, but... Boy, didn't that
Jeff Hoffman strikes
happen.
again.
Yeah, exactly right. We're going to talk to Justin Klugh from Baseball Prospectus. Justin also hosts a couple of podcasts over at the Hittin Season Patreon, which if you want to sign up for that, go to patreon.com/Hittin Season and you can get Absolutely Hammered and The Dirty Inning, fantastic Phillies podcasts over there. Follow him on Blue Sky at Justin Klugh. Justin, how you feeling, pal?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's gearing up for an off-season over at the Hittin Season Patreon. So Absolutely Hammered's next episode will be a sort of text-based adventure that begins with JT Realmuto signing somewhere else. We're going to see where that road takes us in that conversation. And The Dirty Inning will have a new episode as well coming up really soon. That was the, I believe, single-game record for pitches thrown in 2013 that the Phillies played, because that came up after Game 3 of the World Series when they threw like 609 pitches, and I believe that was a postseason record. The Phillies and D-backs did even more. But besides those two things, besides those two networking notes, I did want to mention right off the bat, Gabe Kapler back in a seat of power in the National League East.
When you went to me first, I knew I couldn't mention it, and I had to wait. Thank you, Justin.
Folks, he's back. He's back, and
in a big way.
Smarter than ever, we can only assume, to be promoted.
Enormous.
Well, he never left. He was the assistant general manager with the Miami Marlins, but it was announced on Monday that now he's been given the head job. So Gabe Kapler will be making all of the baseball decisions for a baseball franchise, guys, which is what he was doing in Philadelphia as the manager anyway, which is why it was kind of troublesome. So this will be interesting.
We will see in the next few years exactly what Gabe Kapler imagines the perfect baseball team to be. We will see what the embodiment in baseball team form is of the Gabe Kapler baseball philosophy. Right. I think we'll have an even more direct definition of what that is in this case than we did with the Phillies. I think the bigger question is, do we need that? And the answer is probably no. No, probably not.
Nope. I think we've seen baseball is
time
moving
has
away.
passed, really. I kind of think.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You're right. Baseball is moving away from that. I mean, some of that stuff is still in vogue a little bit, but generally speaking, you don't see openers anymore. And baseball got rid of the defensive shifts, and so there's no pitchers to bat eighth anymore. Like all that silliness that we saw. But I think for a team like the Marlins, who are never going to spend money because they don't want to spend money, maybe you need a little bit of crazy. In order to get a team together that's going to compete. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to work, but it's fascinating. All right.
Hilarious.
It is hilarious. Absolutely bona fide hilarity there. let's talk, before we get into the World Series stuff, on Monday, Major League Baseball also announced its finalists for the major awards, the end-of-season awards, MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, and Manager. And Phillies, to be expected, were featured prominently in a couple of the major awards. Kyle Schwarber was named an NL MVP finalist, along with Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. And just so people understand, these finalists, the baseball writers have already voted. These are just the top 3 vote getters in these different awards. So the votes have already been cast and counted, and this is just baseball's way of drawing it out and making it seem like there's finalists, when really there's not really finalists for this thing. But anyway, Kyle Schwarber finished in the top 3 of the voting. Almost certainly didn't beat Shohei Ohtani out, but he's a finalist. Cristopher Sanchez named a National League Cy Young finalist, along with Paul Skeens and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And this one was surprising to me. Rob Thomson named a finalist for NL Manager of the Year, along with the Reds' Terry Francona and the Brewers' Pat Murphy. So, Justin, I mean, I think we knew that Schwarber was going to be a finalist, Sanchez was going to be a finalist. Those guys will both probably finish runner-up in their respective awards, unless you think maybe there's an upset coming. But I got to say, I did not see Rob Thomson making the final 3.
What was special about Rob Thompson's year this year, I guess? What made this distinct, I guess? Out of the last few years, like the Phillies have gone to the postseason, you know, I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve it. I'm just asking, like, something to me that speaks of some kind of like distinguished mark for that manager, like achieving something different from other years where he wasn't nominated for Manager of the Year. So I wonder what it is that's, you know, that would make him dropped into that pool. But then again, like you said, he could just be one of the ones that's being tossed in there when they already know exactly who's going to win. That being said, you know, hey, actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not
really
going to
wanna
sit here
know.
now and say, like, yeah, if he wins Manager of the Year, that's fine. I feel like we've been having Rob Thomson conversations for a couple of weeks now, and each time we kind of end on the same spot of like, look, you know, I don't agree with everything he's done, but I don't think he's ever been the exclusive source of the problems. I don't feel like the Phillies issues emanate out of the manager's office, even though he's made some choices and used some strategies that everybody agreed with over the last few months. But to give him Manager of the Year, I would disagree with that. I don't think.
Well,
I think this year's is more about like disappointment in what the Phillies have failed to achieve, rather than, you know, hey, it's great what you did, but you know, being nominated is cool. I don't think he's the Manager of the Year.
Right. Well, and Liz, this is a regular season award. These votes were all cast before the playoffs started, as we all know. And I think, you know, my guess is he finished a distant third behind Terry Francona and Pat Murphy for what they did with their respective teams. Is that fair?
Oh, completely. I mean, Terry Francona, this is what, his first year or second year with the Reds? He's definitely winning, I'm pretty sure. He took them to heights previously unimagined for at least, 5-6 years, something like that, with a team that was truly one of the worst. Possibly the worst team to make the playoffs at all was them, but they did enough to make it. And so I think that's probably why Terry Francona will win. But I mean, I can only think that the votes went to Rob Thomson just for consistency. You look over the course of the season and there weren't any big drops. The Phillies didn't seem to have a point where they had an issue. They were really steady. All of the only big problems ended up being Nick Castellanos. So I think everybody ended up realizing was just kind of the squeaky wheel. It was just kind of that bent nail that you're not going to be able to hammer in correctly, so you got to remove it. And you know, maybe that's the basis for it. That, you know, he runs a good clubhouse, at least, you know, outward facing, and you know, the Phillies didn't have a lot of problems, you know, technically, I guess, this year. Yeah. So maybe that's why.
Well, and two, the other National League teams that made the playoffs were all kind of expected, right? The Padres. I mean, the Cubs were a bit of a surprise, but the Cubs didn't have nearly as good a season as the Phillies did in terms of wins and losses. So outside of, you know, and I think Pat Murphy could win. I don't think it's a fait accompli that Terry Francona gets it. And doing what he did with the Brewers on that big winning streak, most wins in baseball, that was a surprise that they were as good as they were.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I probably actually think Murphy is the favorite over Terry Francona.
Maybe. Yeah, I keep forgetting this was, it was just last offseason that Craig Counsell defected so shockingly.
Yeah. And
I just think for this award in particular, they just tend to lean more towards Manager of the Year is the guy who took a team nobody believed in and took them to new heights. And I think the Reds kind of fit that mold because he snuck them into the playoffs. And, they did so in a very backwards way. But that's why I feel like that metric is typically, I don't know if consistency does get awarded a whole lot on this particular platform. I think it's usually like, who has the best story among the managers this year?
Yeah.
Well, and it's Tito. Everybody loves Tito.
Yeah. And that's why, and Tito's coming back from all those health problems that basically forced him to resign from Cleveland. And so, it's a great story. And again, I think Rob Thomson, I'd be surprised if he has any even third, but he probably has third place votes. My guess would be that's as high as it is. But the other teams don't have any managers that have as compelling a story as Rob Thomson. San Diego, Chicago. I'm trying to think of LA. You're not Dave Roberts. That's such a big money team. I think and it was kind of a disappointing regular season for the Dodgers. Coming into it. So. Anyway, that's those are your finalists. I mean, there's American League finalists, and I think that in a lot of these cases, we're going to know who's going to win these things pretty handily in all of the different MVP, Cy Young Award races, and not a lot of drama this year for any of those. So don't expect to see any Phillies holding up any of the big hardware at the end of the season, but it's just nice to be nominated. All right, let's talk about this World Series real quick before we dive into free agency and get your thoughts on this incredible World Series. 7-game World Series will go down as one of the greatest of all time, maybe the greatest World Series of all time from start to finish. And that Game 7, I remember the 91 Game 7 between the Twins and the Braves. Probably more people remember 2001, the walk-off by the Diamondbacks against the Yankees. I mean, there have been some great Game 7s in World Series history, but it is really hard to imagine topping what we saw on Saturday night. And what really struck me, Justin, was Blue Jays, was being a Blue Jays fan. I always identify with the losing team more than the winning team, just because growing up in Philadelphia in the late 80s and 90s, we were that team in 93 in that building, man. I mean, when Joe Carter hit the home run, I saw some of the expressions on the Brewers fans' faces after Will Smith hit the home run. I was like, that was my face. They have my face. That's the exact face I made when Joe Carter hit the home run. And is just to be 2 outs away. 2 outs away. Like, I went back to think about like 2008, when Lidge is on the mound and they get a guy on first base and they're it was a 1-run lead. Like, and it felt like, oh, we're going to win this. We're going to win this. And it was Game 5. So it's totally different than a Game 7, but I had no doubts we were winning that game. Blue Jays fans had to feel like it's happening, and for Miguel Rojas to hit a home run in that spot off Hoffman, I mean, it's just the most.
I hate that guy.
It was excruciating. It was just utterly excruciating. So that's where my thoughts went to. Justin first was like identifying with the Blue Jays fans more than thinking about the Dodgers and Dodgers fans. I went to the heartbreak portion of it rather than the actual champions.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how well adjusted Joe Carter left a generation of people.
That's exactly.
You're watching the World Series, you suddenly jump up from the couch, pointing at the television, screaming, "They stole my face!" And your kids have just like no idea what you're talking about. Just that, something happened, and you are not happy about it. Really, kind of when your team you follow gets eliminated on the way to the World Series, this is kind of the best possible scenario to result from that. An actually objectively good World Series. I too wish that it had been Toronto and not the Dodgers to win it. As much as I was dreading seeing just footage from 1993 on infinite loop throughout the World Series, just because the Blue Jays were in it. I did find that kind of die off pretty quick in my desire, like Liz, to not see, two World Series in a row with the same winner. And because, Dodgers are boring now. The Dodgers win because they're the best. Yeah, they're able to do that. But it's also just, it's boring now. But I do think, in regards to the Blue Jays, their fans are not going to be able to look at this objectively, and that's totally fine. I know there was that one Sportsnet analyst who was like, this is going to sound like sour grapes, but the better team didn't win this World Series. And that's a tough argument to make when you represent the team that didn't win. but I think that's just the desperation to be recognized still as great a team as the Blue Jays were this year, despite being the losers in the World Series. They're gonna wind up being a speed bump outside of Toronto. They're just gonna be like, yeah, the Dodgers won that year. They beat the Blue Jays, whatever. But for their fans, this was a magical season and everything. But those Blue Jays did everything they could to beat these Dodgers. I mean, they blew a couple of chances. They had their, but all they did to get in that spot, to get in that game, to get where they needed to be to win. They did everything they could. That was the most effective offense against the Dodgers throughout the entire postseason. They didn't seem bothered by any of the things that hung the Phillies up. They got the Brewers completely steamrolled. And they're just kind of left with the same thing every fans of every eliminated team has ever been left with. A series of what ifs and shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Should Hoffman have been left in, for more than one inning? Should they have had Dalton Varsho try a suicide squeeze? Why didn't Isaiah Kiefer-Falefa not take a bigger lead? Should they have just bunted with Andres Jimenez instead of trying to get all cute with everything? Should they have pinch hit for Alejandro Kirk and take a double play, have less chances of a double play? These are the questions you are kind of left with when your team just loses. But, I'm not going to tell any Blue Jays fans, well, you can be satisfied with their effort. But in this particular case, when we're fans of a team like the Phillies that have been, throwing themselves at that wall, it's just the realization that you're not really playing to guarantee postseason success. You're playing to get the chance to throw yourself at that wall. And the Blue Jays were doing it really effectively. And they, there's a version of this where the Dodgers are asking what if, the Blue Jays were right there with them. They didn't collapse. They didn't embarrass themselves. And in some cases, they looked really good and effective against the ultimate champions of the sport. So I was really gratified to watch a really intense, tightly played World Series. And I know it's never going to be good enough to lose a World Series no matter how well it was played, but you never got the sense that the Blue Jays didn't deserve to be there. And I feel like the Phillies, the team we watch, has had its legs kicked out from under it by teams that in some cases, there was just no reasonable excuse for them to lose.
Yep.
So in this case, the Blue Jays had a reasonable excuse. They just played a team that outplayed them when the two best teams were going at it.
Yeah, I mean, outplayed them just in a couple of crucial spots, especially in games 6 and 7 late.
Yeah.
I mean,
not all day, every day, just in the spots where they needed to outplay them, they succeeded.
Well, and that's kind of the way it was in the Phillies series.
Yep.
The Phillies outplayed the Dodgers in a lot of ways in that series, but there were some key spots where the Dodgers got the big hit and the Phillies didn't. And we saw that in this series, especially in game 7. I mean, Liz, the Dodgers went 3 for 17 with runners in scoring position in that game. They had so many chances. They had chances in the 9th and in the 11th inning to push a run across. I mean, that bottom of the 9th was insane. I thought for sure that Vladimir Guerrero hit the Joe Carter walk-off home run. And then I thought for sure that Ernie Clement hit a grand slam when that ball left the bat.
That poor kid, jeez.
The grand slam. I mean, so it was just... I think that we as Phillies fans and every team wants to find that magic formula. What's the way we do this? How do we win this World Series? How do you not go 3 for 17 in game 7? We got to figure out how to not do that. And the Blue Jays had the perfect offense for the Dodgers. They scored more runs in the playoffs than any other team has ever scored in a playoffs before. They did everything. They had it all going. They had it all right. Game 6 and 7 at home with a chance to win it all, and just could. But the Dodgers just got those key hits. You get the Miguel Rojas homer and then the Will Smith homer. They just and just one more key hit than the Blue Jays got in that series, and that was the difference. So as a Phillies fan, Liz, I don't feel like there's a big takeaway from this. There's no, it's just stuff that happened.
Exactly. I think the moment, if you look back on it, the moment where they lost, and I think it was one of the earlier innings, they had the bases loaded. And the bases had been loaded. It was Bo Bichette at second base. I don't know who was at first. Now, a healthy Bo Bichette scores from second and gives him another run early, and which changes the whole face of the game. But if it goes the same way that it did, there would be a better chance of the Blue Jays straight up winning. But Bo Bichette was not healthy. He has a knee issue that's been bothering him all year. And it was evident whenever he was on the bases and running, he was not He was not running at anywhere near full speed. It looked like he was running in slow motion. And so he went from second to third on that hit. And they didn't get any runs across the plate in that inning, despite the bases loaded. And that's just what happens. You have a player that is vital, that normally wouldn't be out there, but it's the most important game of the year.
And he had a 3-run home run to give him the first 3 runs.
He did. Like, and that's it. Like, he did exactly what he needed to do. But there's these little tiny moments where you could see that the Dodgers got the edge because they happened to have all of their guys healthy. And the Blue Jays were struggling down the stretch with George Springer and Bo Bichette. So, I did want to read something. I don't think there are any takeaways on this from Phillies fans, but you can sort of get a view of these types of teams that do well sort of unexpectedly. They're special types of teams, like the 93 Phillies team, like the 2022 Phillies. This is a team like that. And we see Keegan Matheson, who I believe is Blue Jays beat writer, wrote at 1:03 a.m. on November 2nd, Ernie Clement said, "I've been crying for an hour. I thought I was done with the tears. I just love these guys so much. It was so fun coming to work every day." And that's just
his interview.
That's just the sweetest thing.
Yeah.
It's not just that they didn't win. It's that now it's all over. And I think that's a lot of what we felt at the end of the 22 season, that it wasn't just that they didn't win when they had a chance. They had chances, my God. But now this wonderful chemistry with this team, this wonderful feeling that you get from watching them every day, knowing that they're having the same amount of fun playing that you are watching them, that's just over. And every team is ephemeral. It's one time only. You can't recreate it no matter how hard you try. And you just sort of have to say goodbye. So I think we can all relate to Blue Jays fans really well. Not that they want to be related with at this moment, nor should we try to let them have their pain because they earned it. My God.
If your team's problem is that you're not getting any power from the middle of the batting order, or you're not getting good defense up the middle, then you go into the offseason and you're like, all right, well, who's available? Who are better players for those things? And then the results of that are that during the regular season, when things are measured more in streaks, they're going to influence, a set of 20 games more positively than you did last year. But then you get to the postseason where things aren't about streaks. They're about surgery. They're about getting lucky in moments, or even you could say mental skills where somebody's able to keep their head on straight in a huge critical moment with high stakes.
Right.
So I'm having a hard time articulating exactly what lesson there is to draw here, because the Phillies are clearly a team that's good enough to go to the postseason 4 years in a row. Now, I want to dig more into this later in the offseason because I started looking into this for a segment I wanted to do. But there's a couple of teams in baseball history that have gone to the postseason 4 times in a row, not won a World Series in that stretch. So I wanted to look at what they did after year 4. What steps did they take? And obviously every team is different, but I wanted to look at it in the broadest possible way. What major changes did they change? Their philosophy? Did they decide to blow it up? What did they do? And the A's coming into 2004 decided they weren't going to be as offensive a team anymore. They've invested more in outfield defense. They were betting on this unproven closer in Arthur Rhodes, and they were hoping for bounce back performances from a bunch of key guys. The 2015 Tigers, they were shifting their focus to add more defense. They were just kind of praying that no one would get hurt. That was going to be a big issue for them. And they were leaning on these replacements to hit the same ceilings as some of their predecessors. So they had David Price replacing Max Scherzer, Yoenis Cespedes taking over for Torrey Hunter, Shane Green taking over for Rick Porcello. That one didn't work. You have the 2022 Brewers. They took a different look at things. They said, let's just run it back, because why not? They had this elite rotation, great bullpen, strong up the middle defense, no offense. Waiting for Christian Yelich to figure it out was kind of their plan. They didn't add a hitter when they needed to, and they added around the margins where necessary. And then you have the 2023 Cardinals, who were coming back from being eliminated by the Phillies. They had to replace these former franchise legends in Molina and Pujols. eventually injuries just kind of ruined everything for them. Their opening day lineup was never together again after opening day. And nothing they planned on working for them worked out. So in short, looking at those 4 teams, none of them went to the postseason after this.
Wow.
But they did all take different views. And I will say the 2015 Tigers are interesting because they did one thing in 2015 that the Phillies could specifically do and fired Dave Dombrowski in August of 2015.
I was gonna say.
So that option would, technically be available, but I don't know. I think there's some interesting areas to get into there because, these are teams that wind up in interesting parts of their history where it's like, all right, we got to make a choice here. After 4 tries and no World Series title, even a great team starts thinking, what do we need to change? What's got to get tweaked around here? Or do we really think let's just go back with these same guys and assume we're close enough to blast all the way through? But I don't have any real conclusions yet. I'm looking forward to looking into this more a little later in the offseason. But I'll just also add that there's 2 teams that went to the postseason 5 times in a row without a World Series, and 1 that went 6 times in a row without a World Series in the Yankees. But these are also all very contemporary modern teams, obviously, because going to the postseason used to mean you were one of the 2 teams in the World Series.
Right.
So it's an interesting place to find yourself, and I think history offers some examples of what the Phillies could do next.
Fascinating. That's definitely interesting to dive into more as the offseason goes along. And if you're going to write about it, it's a really interesting look. And we can kind of shift into free agency talk now because this is going to be a large part of what the Phillies decide to do here as they have their 5th attempt in 5 seasons to try and win a World Series with a very inflexible roster. This roster just is what it is. It's inflexible. There's not a lot they can do to change things up. There are some things they can do. And before we start talking about the free agents who are outside the organization, I think we all know, everybody knows, everybody's following this team knows that there's going to be 2 directions this team takes this offseason. One in which they re-sign Kyle Schwarber to a free agent contract and one in which they do not. Because I don't think they're signing Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto. I certainly think they're signing one of them. And I think they probably will sign both. That's my guess as to what's going to happen. And I don't think they're going to have the payroll to go out and get another big money, like $200 million free agent. I just don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they have the financial chutzpah to do the kind of thing that the Dodgers do, which is to run up a crazy luxury tax bill like the Dodgers have done, and really the only the Dodgers and Mets have done over the last couple of years. So that's the thing is, like, if you think that the Phillies are going to re-sign Kyle Schwarber to a free agent contract and JT Realmuto, those are probably the big ticket items. And then you're looking at trades and you're looking at moving Bowman, all this kind of stuff, which we can talk about trades at another time. And when we talk about some of these free agents at other positions, they'll require trades if the Phillies want to end up going that route. But before we kind of jump into the nuts and bolts of these different players, guys, as far as Kyle Schwarber goes, if there's a real call for change and we really want to see, like you're talking about, Justin, if the Phillies do want to do something different here in year number 5 and to change things up and not just to simply bring back most of the same roster and the same guys and try to do it a 5th time. That old saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, there's an argument to be made that bringing Kyle Schwarber back, maybe the better option is to let Kyle Schwarber go, a guy who's probably going to finish 2nd in the MVP voting and hit 56 home runs last year, to bring in different bats into the lineup. And then you're talking about, then all bets are off. Then you can be talking about Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman, Eugenio Suarez, Bo Bichette, Kyle Tucker, these different guys, Cody Bellinger, some of the other names that we're going to talk about. If you feel like maybe things would work better if you had a bigger right-handed bat in the lineup as opposed to Kyle Schwarber there left-handed with Bryce Harper. Maybe that just helps the offense feel different or function differently or something like that. There's an argument to be made that that's maybe the better baseball decision. I don't agree. I don't think that it is, but I'm also uncomfortable about just bring Schwarber back, bring Realmuto back, and I guess we're done, and there's not a whole lot else to do.
Any of these exercises begin with one of those 2 guys not coming back because that's the only way you got them wiggle room to do anything that's close to the amount of change we want to do. And when we have that trades conversation, I had 7 hours in a car today to put some stuff together that I still think doesn't make any sense, but you guys,
I can't wait.
You'll have to be the judge of
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm with you that it would be comical. I started thinking today of like there's this talk of like Kyle Schwarber getting stolen by the Mets, but then what if the Phillies come around and sign Pete Alonso and they just kind of like swap big bats in one off season and then have to run back at each other?
I don't think Liz likes that idea. I just saw her face.
That's the issue.
You cannot do that. You cannot replace. You cannot replace Kyle Schwarber with Pete Alonso.
You can't replace Kyle Schwarber at all, which is
you can't.
Actually,
that's it.
That's the entire point. Is that if the Phillies want Schwarber leaving, if he were to leave, to feel like anything other than a complete backstabbing betrayal, then whoever's job it is to put any kind of doubt out there that he's not coming back should be fired immediately, because they are not doing their job. Anything out there, everything you read on every site, again, it's not directly from the Phillies, but every rumor, every media is like, he wants to be there. They want him to be there. They're actually not even separated by that much. It's going to happen. So I would be very surprised if it didn't happen. And it doesn't take long looking at alternatives to be like, yeah, we could let him go. Look at this really unflattering designated hitter free agent market. Poke around at some trades and try to recreate that offense somewhere else, or understand that Kyle Schwarber is such a crucial part of what this team's definitive qualities are, that by losing him, you are automatically going to have to change what kind of team the Phillies are. Like, that's a huge piece of your offense that's just not there anymore, and you're going to have a hard time replacing. So if you're interested in having those home runs in your lineup, wouldn't it just be easier to bring the guy back who hits them? And like at the end of the day, that's really like the straightest and most simplest and most straightforward way to go about this. If your argument is let him go because then all that money gets freed up, sure. But that's the team changing. That's right. How the team operates and plays totally changing. So I think ultimately he comes back, but if he doesn't, yeah, you're looking at a totally different team.
Yeah, and Liz, is there something to be said for that? To like letting him go and putting together a totally different team, and you can reimagine your outfield, you can kind of reimagine the DH spot, and maybe that reimagines third base. Like, you certainly have more creativity at your disposal. But it might not make you better.
That's the thing. Like, why would you? Not that Dave Dombrowski is lazy, but why would you want to do all that work to replace something that you can have? Like, what? The argument is just money at this point, and I don't know if that's a big enough reason to say let's not bring him back, because he is the best power hitter in the National League, and you already have that guy on your team. Why not just bring him back and make part of your job easier? I feel like it's a no-brainer to re-sign Schwarber. I feel like it's a little tougher looking at Realmuto. Despite, the good year he had, I think it might be a little tougher looking at him because, he's very good at what he does, but he did have some really disappointing down streaks this year. And, you have a catcher in the system that you like who is definitely not as good. But if you free up some of that money, you could bring in someone else. If you are willing to punt almost at catcher, you could bring in someone else if you wanted who could improve the lineup. But then you're also now replacing some, one good hitter with someone else you hope is going to live up to that.
Yeah,
I'm not looking at it right in front of me. Sorry, John, but I have to feel that, like, if your plan is let them walk and then restrict yourself to finding their replacements in free agency, you are saying you are willing to downgrade the Phillies. Yeah. Because those answers are not in free agency this year.
I would say with DH, you can get creative. You can, if you don't sign Kyle Schwarber, you can, move Harper to DH full time and sign a first baseman like Alonso, like we're talking about, or you could move Harper to DH, and if you're not going to trade Bohm, move Bohm to first base, and then you can go get one of the third basemen, or you can make Kyle Tucker, an outfielder and do something that way, because they need to upgrade in the outfield, and if you're removing Schwarber's bat, then it doesn't matter if you go get a left-hander or not, So there's different things that you could do there, if you know, so I don't think it's necessarily you need to find a DH for the DH. You know, you can kind of basically pick any position that you want, which means you've got more bats to kind of choose from and say, do any of these other bats, might they fit better than Kyle Schwarber in this lineup? I don't know that they would. I think what would be ideal is if the Phillies signed Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto and went and got another big bat to fill out that lineup. And that's what they really need to do. I just don't think they're going to spend the money to do that, because I was looking at Jim Bowden doesn't get a lot of stuff right. But one thing he is pretty good at is like guessing contract stuff. And he has Kyle Schwarber at 5 years, $160 million. That's a $32 million average annual value. JT Realmuto, 2 years, $34 million, $17 million average annual value. You're right, Liz. If they don't sign JT Realmuto, that's probably about like $17 million they would have to free up, but they don't have any spots on the roster to use that money. Like it has to, like, the catcher is where you need to replace somebody. Like you're still locked in all these different positions, except maybe outfield. Maybe you can, but you're talking about Trent Grisham then in that case. You know what I mean? Like, which, maybe that's fine, but I don't know. So let's talk about some of these other free agents here, and we'll start with the bats. And again, I think we're going to be talking about a lot of these guys as if Kyle Schwarber doesn't return. So give me, if the Phillies, on the list of guys I gave you in the show sheet, if the Phillies do not re-sign Kyle Schwarber, Liz, give me one free agent you would most want to see them sign this offseason.
You're muted.
You're muted, Liz. Buttons.
Sorry, there was a fire truck going by my house yet again, so I felt I should mute it instead of let it go over the.
Good choice.
Yeah, except I forgot to unmute myself. Bad choice. All right. Looking at the choices that have been outlined, I like Bo Bichette a lot.
Yeah.
He's projected to sign a pretty big contract, but he's also young, which is
28.
Nice.
Yep.
He's 28. Mm-hmm. He's very good. I was looking him up to see how often he's been injured. And over the last 3 years, he's been injured a lot. He played 135 games in 2023, just 81 in 2024, and 139 this year. So it's a little bit better this year, I guess. And it's not necessarily a huge, a massive, massive amount of games in 2 of the 3 years. But
Harper misses that many every year.
Exactly. But do you want to take on a guy who is injured as often as that? And that's the question. Sure. I like Cody Bellinger, but he's getting up there. He's a little bit more affordable, maybe, overall than some of the other guys. I don't see how he'd command, I'll be honest, I don't know if 6 years, $168 million is in the cards, which is what you have down here. I think that's what Bowden said. But I don't know if that's in the cards for him. That seems kind of rich. But it might just be those. I don't dislike Eugenio Suarez. I think he's fine. But the rest of them I don't want to touch. Get Pete Alonso away from me. I don't want Alex Bregman on this team. No, thank you.
What is it you don't like about Pete Alonso? Because I think, I mean, aside from the annoying, home run derby faces that he makes, he's been a really consistent, solid right-handed power hitter who hits for a decent
never injured.
Average. Has he been though?
No, he's never injured.
I don't think she's being sarcastic.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm looking him up, and I mean, he has a couple of real bad years. What you heard was
the sad, slow realization that Pete Alonso would be a good fit.
I don't.
We just don't like him because he's a Met, but he would be a good fit.
He would be an okay fit, I think. I don't know. I've never liked him very much as a player, and this was his first up year since 2022. He hit 240 last year and 217 the year before that. He doesn't get injured, though. He has played 162 games over the past 2 years. Each year, he hasn't missed a single one. 154 in 2023 and 160 in 2022.
Wow.
That's the kind of guy that they need. I wish I didn't hate him with the fire of 1,000 suns, but unfortunately I do. I mean, I'll just have to say, I mean, if they signed him, I would get used to it. I got used to Jeff Francoeur.
Fair enough. All right, Justin.
If they signed him for more than 2 years, I will have a problem.
Is Jeff Francoeur available to DH?
I don't
perhaps?
think he's. I don't think he can.
No, he's too busy being a really bad broadcaster, man.
Yeah, it's a little too much Jeff Francoeur on a regular basis.
All right, here's what you do. All right, but this requires you to be really aggressive about something you have no reason to believe you'll be successful because you have never been successful in this area before. However, you throw the entire weight of your organization behind it. You fire press every button you have to get Munetaka Murakami to come to Philadelphia and play third base. Then suddenly, this small but significant market of teams, maybe 3 or 4 teams, that are currently looking or could really use a guy who plays third base and can play a little first. All of them are now frustrated that Murakami is off the table for them. However, you turn to any of them, maybe the Red Sox, and say, hey, we have this perfectly usable third base, can play first base guy that we actually have no use for anymore. So if you want to strike a deal for Alec Boehm, we would be happy to put something together there. The Red Sox are a team that is willing to deal and have some interesting players. And this, I don't want to get too far into, the plan I said I was putting together earlier, but there are some very useful, young, and attainable outfielders in the Boston Red Sox organization right now. Some of whom you'd be buying low on, some of whom you'd be buying maybe a little medium on. But end of the day, you're addressing multiple issues at once. So it was hard for me not to let the dominoes fall after that. And again, it is extremely unlikely. I think the Phillies are really dead set on setting up Italy as their international market of choice. But Japan, in that market and that area would be really fun to win one of those. It's not crazy for a Japanese player to play on the East Coast. It's not crazy for a Japanese player to play on the Phillies. Neither of those things would be happening for the first time. So I'm just, this early in the offseason, I'm very curious because the kid's 25 years old. He's like 2-time MVP. He was like triple crown winner at an absurdly young, level. Yeah, he's proven everything he needs to prove, I think, over there. And if he wants to come to Major League Baseball, I think he can pitch him and say, hey, you can go there and you can join a very successful organization, probably win a World Series. But you could come to Philadelphia and not be the guy who is playing behind Shohei Ohtani, and instead be a guy who's pioneering a whole new situation over here and creating a whole new era for the Phillies. And that, I think, would be a very seismic change on the level that people probably want to see. It would surprise a lot of people. And you don't lose Schwarber and Real Muto in this case, though, of course, the money is an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and if this is because, we're removing Schwarber, then it doesn't matter if he's left-handed.
Right, sorry. If we're removing Schwarber, especially since, and this was one of my points, Murakami is said to have, quote, Schwarber-like power, for the record.
Right. And he hits from the left side. So, I mean, you're kind of swapping out Schwarber for Murakami, and then maybe you're swinging a deal with Boston for, they've got a center fielder named Sedano Rafaela, who's not a big power guy, but he's right-handed. He's young, with Roman Anthony and Jaron Duran. They're too similar. Those names are way too similar. We couldn't have Jaron Duran and Joan Duran on the same
team.
The
baseball name generator was on the fritz that day.
Right. And they got Wilyer Abreu and Roman Anthony. They do have a lot of different guys there. I think an Alec Boehm to the Red Sox.
Go ahead, say the guy's name that you're skipping because it's hard to say.
What name am I forgetting?
You're so mean.
Joneston Garcia.
Who?
The password. The center fielder. The people have been. His name has come up a little more in the past couple weeks. Yeah, the guy. Now you're gonna make me spell it. J-H.
You can't make it up. You've now made it a thing.
I spent all this time learning to pronounce
the Red Sox.
You've made it a thing.
Me to spell it. Yeah,
No one's forcing you.
Jostinson Garcia. Jostynxon.
He's not on their depth chart though. I'm looking at the Red Sox depth chart right now. He's not on there. Is he in the minors?
Oh yeah, he's only played like 5 games for them this year. He's young.
Oh,
He's
okay.
extremely young.
Okay. Yeah, fine. Him too. I don't know anything about him. So that's why I wasn't familiar. I wasn't vibing the name. I didn't know who that was. So
Center
yeah.
field option.
Yeah, they've got so the Red Sox have lots of outfielders. The Phillies, if you can offload Alec Bohm, which I think is absolutely happening this offseason. I think I think that's one area where they feel like they can make an upgrade. But I mean, I think if they don't sign Kyle Schwarber, to me, I think you go hard after Pete Alonso. I really do. I don't love Pete Alonso as a just because he's a Met, but I think he gives you a lot of what this team needs, in terms of right-handed power. And I think that there's a world, and I would love to believe that this is the case, that if Eugenio Suarez is going to get something like 3 years, $72 million, like $24 million average annual value, if you only have to commit 3 years to Eugenio Suarez, I wonder if you can't sign Schwarber Realmuto and sneak him onto the payroll somehow. I would love to think that you can do that. Now, you're still like crazy short in the outfield. I still don't know what you do in the outfield in this scenario where we're talking about adding infielders, because you're losing Castellanos. It sounds like we're still probably going to go with platoons in left and right field, especially if you get somebody like a Cedeno Rafaela to partner with Brandon Marsh or Justin Crawford, and Rob Reifsnyder could be somebody that you go out and get as a right-handed platoon bats, but then you still need a center fielder. So is it going to be Justin Crawford in center? There's a lot of, they got to figure out who they want to play center field this year too, and could be Harrison Bader, because we don't really know. I mean, tell me your thoughts on Bader. Justin and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Liz, looking at Bader and looking at center field. Like, they don't want Brandon Marsh to play center field. I don't think they think Justin Crawford should be an everyday center fielder. So what are your options out there? I mean, Cody Bellinger's played center. Trent Grisham played some center. There's certainly trades we could talk about, but just strictly looking at free agency, that Harrison Bader's the other center fielder who's out there this offseason.
Like, again, there are going to be hard decisions to make on this during this offseason for Dave Dombrowski. I don't think this should be one of them. Harrison Bader fit in so well with the team and did so well while he was here. He was beloved by everyone, and I think brought an energy to the team that they really needed. I don't see why they shouldn't re-sign him, honestly. You had this guy that you traded for that ended up being almost exactly what you needed. Why punt on that just to find someone else? Like, I understand that running it back sounds bad, but a lot of this is just like an excuse to go looking somewhere else. And most of the time you're going to come back to, well, this is actually the best guy for the job. And I think Harrison Bader is the best guy for the job in center field.
Problem with assembling a really good team is that you're really narrowing the field when you're trying to upgrade in some cases.
Right.
Like
you
whether
need
you're either
good
trying
players.
You're trying to replace a good player with a great player, but like that comes with a huge cost, or you're just kind of priced out of the market to improve somewhere where you're mediocre because you're spending a lot to improve other places. So I'm with you, John. You used the word uncomfortable. I would not be. It would just not feel comfortable watching them come back with the same team, even with everything we're saying being very logical and making sense. The fact is, it's not a really easy time or safe time to be going looking for a catcher, center fielder, closer, these positions where, every team needs at least one, but there probably aren't enough for every team to even have one true one in every case. We talked about this with cleanup hitters and true leadoff hitters a couple months ago. Center field, I'm just so eager for it to be solidified in Philadelphia. Yeah. It's been so long, and I've said earlier again this offseason that they really haven't had a legit center fielder since Shane Victorino. And, Bader, you could see that. And like Liz is saying, if he's already here and you can't improve, you can improve on Harrison Bader as a player, but for the job and role that you would be looking for him to have, only so many guys are going to be able to play center field like that. And you got an inside track here, it feels, to be like, hey, this is an opportunity. However, it's Harrison Bader. That bat's going to come and go as it pleases. So, when he's in the middle of a 6-week cold spell, it's going to be and he's not doing it on the Phillies. It's going to be a lot easier to be okay with Harrison Bader not being on the Phillies.
Yeah, I just I get this. I get the suspicion that from an offensive standpoint, the Phillies' moves this offseason are going to be Schwarber, Real Muto, and Harrison Bader. Like it's going to be, and then they're going to kind of figure out the outfield with some of the other part-time players that we're kind of talking about, like Miguel Andujar. Well, he's an infielder. Like he's not even not even an outfielder. I mean,
look, let's just say they bring back Schwarber and they do everything you're saying. They bring back Schwarber, Real Muto, and Bader, but we're also saying that we believe that Castellanos is obviously going to go, and Alec Boehm seems very likely to go. Is that not a logical amount of change? Like that's significant change to the batting. That's 2 regular starters. I know Castellanos had lost the starting job by the end, but 2 typically starters for the Phillies that are now changed out. And the big haunting shadow of the impending free agency of the other guys is no longer an issue. So, I mean, wouldn't that, you could frame that it's like that's enough for the people who are like, no, things need to be different, because even with a team that's good, change is required to find this missing piece.
Yeah.
Change for change's sake is what I think most people are asking for. They just want the team to look different because this team made them sad. And I get it, because this team made me sad and all of you sad. And it made us sad not just during the playoffs, but at various times during the season. But that is the uncontrolled, angry part of all these fans talking. The uncontrolled, sad, broken part. They're just like, we need massive change. The ones who are just like, I'm not going to be satisfied unless one of the big 3 are gone. And I don't want us to entertain that. Because it's dumb and not going to happen.
The fans aren't going to make those changes, though. They're not in charge of that. So if Dave Dombrowski's like, I'm going to make a change here, there's going to be more than just making a change for change's sake going into it. There's going to be like, well, this is a guy we like for these reasons. We think he can do this. We consider this an improvement. And I mean, that sets it apart from change for change's sake. The Phillies would never just make a change to make a change. Even with Castellanos,
of course.
They got to make that change because that's just not working, and he doesn't fit here anymore. That's going to improve the team, I think. So I think a healthy amount of change is a natural and valid strategy for a team at this point. If it was 2023 and they were like, let's rip this thing down, like, no, that's crazy. That's change for no reason. This would be more like, yeah, we wanted it to work this way. We expected it to work this way. If it had worked the way it was supposed to work in 2023, we wouldn't be having any of these conversations, because they would just be a really good team in the middle of a World Series era. But it didn't happen. So yeah, maybe some change is healthy just to move the furniture around.
Oh, sure. I mean, you were talking about change. I was just talking about what fans are demanding that we have filtered into our conversation, because I think we're responding like we know that there has to be change, but the fans are the only ones demanding big, massive, huge change. Like, Justin, you're like, is this not an appropriate amount of change? I'm like, yes, it is. It's absolutely an appropriate amount of change, but the response to that is, the response from the fans.
Received.
Yeah, I don't think so. And that it's just the disconnect between the professional guy who is a Hall of Fame, executive, who is now in charge of our team, making sensible decisions, and what we hear from fans, which is everything sucks, move everything around. I want to see Harrison Bader at catcher. Like, that's the stuff that we have to make sure we ignore, because people are calling for massive change, but there isn't going to be any. But I think you're right. There is going to be like a decent amount of change. We will have several position players almost certainly that are different. And that is good enough for me.
I agree. And I think part of this, too, is the psychology of the clubhouse, too. I think it just needs a different mix of voices and players and stuff like that, because, you kind of get stuck in this negative feedback loop of, man, we fell short again this year. Like the pressure just continues to build and build and build on these same guys. And so I just worry that sometimes, it starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So there's an off-field mental aspect to wanting to make some changes here. And but like as the Blue Jays showed in the World Series, like they had a lineup that did all the different kinds of things that you would want a lineup to do to be successful in the playoffs, and they were tremendously successful, and they just fell short. So maybe the Phillies do have that. Maybe they do have that in place, and they just need another crack at it, and just keep taking cracks at it and see if maybe this is the time, Bryce Harper gets the big hit, or maybe the Phillies get the big hit in Game 4 of an NLDS where they win 3-2. Maybe that's when it happens, and it hasn't these last few years.
That's been my argument. Like, you look at the team and it's pretty complete. Like, at the end of this year, after the trade deadline, this was a team that we thought had a chance to compete. And what happened was different, but there are 30 teams and 29 of them are sad at the end of the season, and like 4 or 5, 6 of them, 7 of them are really sad because they had a chance and they
Really
didn't do
sad.
it. And then one other team is like devastated to the point of digging a hole and wanting to bury themselves in it because they lost the World Series. Like, every year ends in disappointment except for one team. I demand of myself to keep that in perspective, because there are long odds of winning the World Series. And I think, some of it, I think, is the Eagles winning the Super Bowl twice in like 5 years has made people realize, the Phillies are not nearly as successful now with these big players as we thought they would be. Look at the other good team in Philadelphia.
We've talked, for a while now about these free agents, and I don't think anybody on this podcast is high on Alex Bregman, are they? It doesn't sound like it. Give me a reason, Justin. Give me a reason why.
Logistical reasons are I don't want to get locked into the deal. I don't want another deal with a player in his 30s playing a key position like that. I feel like it's just going to get more top heavy on Philly's payroll. But I also just dislike Alex Bregman as a player.
Okay. Same with Kyle Tucker in that regard. Like, it's also a big.
No, Kyle Tucker, I don't dislike as a player, but his injuries and kind of abrupt pivot this year were a turnoff as him being a free agent.
Yeah, and Liz, you mentioned you didn't like Bregman either for the same reasons.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep, I don't like him. I like him less than Pete Alonso.
Okay.
He is a former Astro of the 2017 era. Was he even on the team in 22? I don't remember. Let's have a look. Yes, he was.
Remember, he threw
more
home runs in
reasons to
game
hate
one
him.
off of Aaron Nola.
Yeah, more reasons to hate him. No, thank you.
That's part of the appeal of Murakami, by the way. He's only 25 years old.
Yeah, that's a big.
And I didn't
point.
even mention him because it's in my mind that the Phillies are just never going to sign a Japanese free agent.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think this is a good opportunity for them to do it. He would fit in really well and allow them to sign other guys. That's an excellent point, Justin. I would like for that to happen.
Very curious to see what he's going to get as a Japanese player coming over here. What kind of contract that's going to look like, but. Yeah, I mean, the odds are long because, again, Phillies they're not a destination for Japanese superstars. But, like you said, maybe somebody does want to chart their own course. And the Phillies have shown they're willing to offer. They offered Yamamoto more money than the Dodgers did. And, I don't think there was ever really a thought that he would take it. So it's easier to offer money. But
just show up every time. Every time one of these incredible Japanese studs gets posted, just show up with more money than the Dodgers and be like, it's right here if you want it. Like, I know, I get the situation, but it's right here. And one of them's going to say yes.
By doing that, you give yourself a chance every time.
Yeah. Real quick on pitchers. We are all focused, obviously, on offense, but the Dodgers basically pitched this entire postseason without using any relievers, right? They used starters from start to finish. They had some bullpen usage.
Really
and
messed with my projections the way they just kind of took their bullpen out of the equation there.
Yeah,
That didn't seem like that was going to be a possible option for them.
Interesting, and I think the Phillies' plan was to do something similar with Zach Wheeler in the rotation and use Jesus Luzardo kind of in that way and have a bunch of different guys as starters working as relievers. We kind of saw what the plan was there. So I'm wondering, I mean, I think we all agree Ranger Suarez won't be coming back, especially not at the number that it looks like he probably will sign for. So do you see them signing any other free agent starter of note? I mean, I'm crossing Framber Valdez off the list. I'm crossing off kind of all of the high-end guys, but I listed a few different guys here. Merrill Kelly, all these guys would be getting like 1 or 2 year deals. Merrill Kelly, Chris Bassett, pitched really well in the playoffs for Toronto. Tyler Mahle will get like a 1-year deal. Zach Littell, Nick Martinez, Jose Quintana, who I've always liked. He always shuts the Phillies down. He's pretty consistent. Jack Flaherty, Brandon Woodruff has injury concerns, but man, if he comes back, he could be a good starter. I just wonder if maybe it wouldn't make sense for the Phillies to go out and get a couple guys like that this offseason. I know they have a starting rotation seemingly assembled, plus they still have Taijuan Walker around, but you can't, if there's any lesson to take away, the Phillies starting pitching against the Dodgers was great, Liz, but maybe it wasn't enough because you still had to throw Matt Strahm. I mean, the Dodgers didn't want to throw guys like Matt Strahm out there. They didn't want to throw guys like David Robertson out there. They just said, no, we're not doing it unless we absolutely have to.
And that's just a tough place for non-Dodgers teams to live. No, I mean, it's just a thing that you don't even, like Justin said, I didn't even consider that when thinking about things they would do. Neither did I. I had no idea that they would just not put their relievers out there because everyone was waiting for that Blake Trinan inning. And after a certain point, you did not see him because he is bad. Despite Dave Roberts? No.
Dave Roberts.
Is that him? Dave Roberts, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Despite Dave Roberts apparently loving him more than his own children and putting him in all the time
somebody
in the regular
snipped
season.
that bullpen phone line. Like he was picking that up and going like, get me Trinan. And there was like someone whose job on the other end was go, absolutely, Dave Roberts. We're going to get Blake Trinan warming up right now. And then just like throw the phone in the trash.
And they say, Emmett Sheehan, get warmed up,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You said Blake Trinan. I don't think he works here anymore.
No.
Yeah,
Nope.
sorry, man.
No.
I don't know. So my early season roadmaps for the Phillies that I got underway this week really all hinge on taking a big swing at a starting pitcher. But I will preface this by saying, John, I feel like we're once again falling into the trap of the only way to win a World Series is how the last team who won a World Series won the World Series, which it doesn't necessarily have to go that way. You can still win a World Series with like 3-4 awesome starters and a great bullpen. But looking at it like, who are some like starters who like you can just use as like also your bullpen, like have enough guys that can pitch more than one inning, can pitch 3 innings, whatever, out of the bullpen, but also like are good and aren't being relegated to that role, who are there to fill that role well and aren't like a pitcher who just isn't good anymore and is now doing that job. And you're right, there are some names on that list, like Merrill Kelly's awesome. I think that would be a terrific pickup. But I also just am now like enraptured by these ideas of like trade a bunch of your top prospects for Tarek Skubal. Like really react to the Zach Wheeler news by saying like, we're thinking about the future as well as the present, and we're just going to bring in another ace and stick him at the top of that rotation, and it'll be a very good and strong rotation again. I don't want to bring it up yet because we can save it for a future conversation, but I was looking at other trade candidates, and Phillies can make a trade for another frontline starter that would make their rotation extremely formidable. And, but to your point, then you're kind of like pinning everything to one guy's health, rather than having like 3-4 guys around who can fulfill similar roles. And so I don't know. I mean, that is not an unrealistic notion. It just does. You just are falling back into like, okay, well, if we just copy the Dodgers, then we'll just attain what the Dodgers have already gotten. And I don't know. I don't know if the Phillies are capable of that. The Dodgers have like.
I don't think Dombrowski wants to
resources.
do that.
I don't think.
And I don't think that's Dombrowski. That's not his favorite way to do that either.
No, it's going to be a traditional roster. They're going to try and get a couple of other bullpen arms. And by the way, some relievers who could be of interest to the Phillies. Tyler Rogers is one that I think is really interesting. Sidearm guy. Could probably get him on a 2-year deal. I would definitely be interested in something like that. Raisel Iglesias had a really good year for the Braves. Emilio Pagan had a good year for the Reds. Got him Brad Keller, Devin Williams, both those, Luke Weaver, a couple guys from the Yankees had very good seasons. Ryan Helsley stunk it up in New York. That would be like a Jordan Romano bounce back idea right there, a 1-year type deal.
Sure, we'll just take some Mets scraps. That's the change you wanted, right, Philadelphia?
Oh, my God.
but I think they should be fishing in that market for one of those guys at least, to kind of fill out the bullpen a little bit. Because again, I don't trust Matt Strom. I don't trust a lot of those guys back there. And even Joan Duran took a little bit of a trust hit late in the year. He's not automatic, as I was touting when we got him. He's not automatic. He's not a miracle worker. He's not going to do it every time. So yeah, it was a. It's going to be it's the pitching staff will be traditional. It's not going to be like the Dodgers had, and you can't do it that way for sure. Well, I do want in another podcast, maybe the next one we can kind of get into some trade targets, trade talk. Sounds like, Justin, you've done a lot of the legwork already on that, so we can kind of put together some trade thoughts, guys to target in other locations. But first things first, of course, will be some of these free agents. I don't think anybody's going to sign. It's one of the things that stink about baseball free agency, like in football and in basketball. Like the first 48 hours of free agency are wild, and it's so much fun. Man, some of these guys aren't going to sign until March. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works in baseball nowadays. So we'll see how it goes, see who comes back to Philadelphia and where they go for help outside. We'll wrap things up with some final thoughts. Liz, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
I figured I might as well talk about what I've been working on. I need something to keep my hands busy when I'm doing nothing but talking. So I do crochet. I'm making a weighted blanket.
It doesn't look that heavy.
No, that's because I started it yesterday.
Okay. So it'll get heavier. Good.
It will get heavier and larger, and I actually have plans in the future. I'm working up patterns for weighted blankets with Phillies patterns, giant Phillies peas on them.
That's fun.
To give to friends, yes.
Very nice. Well, that's very nice. I know you've been...
Would you like one? Please be my friend.
I'd like one. I'll put it behind me. I'll put it on
you
the back
guys are friends. If you'd like one, let me know.
Yeah, give me a Phillies weighted blanket.
In 5 years, you'll probably get one. These take a long time to do.
Extra weight on mine, please.
Excellent.
16-pound blanket, please.
I'll do. I'll use like washers, actual metal washers, instead of plastic pony beads for yours.
Justin Klugh, author of the forthcoming book, Summer of the Cheap Wieners from Brookline Books. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, on that note, if you're hearing this before Tuesday, November 4th at noon, I'm doing an AMA on the Phillies subreddit. If you want to ask a question, I'm pretty sure the only question on there right now is, what do you mean by the Joe Buck tweet? So I'd love some variety.
People had to have that explained. It was very cute.
And greater amounts of questions as well, so I don't feel like a complete loser. But I will be doing that, talking about Summer of the Cheap Wieners, talking about the Phillies, I assume, talking about Chris Jones and the atrocities he's threatened to commit against rival mascots. All the stuff you want to talk about in the offseason over there. Yeah, Tuesday, November 4th at noon. We will be doing that. And to your point about other sports and free agency, I heard it described once as other sports free agency is like the gates go up in a room and everybody runs in and a huge knife fight breaks out. Whereas with the Phillies, it's like a single door opens and a man comes in, sets a really ominous looking timer that starts ticking down and then just walks out of the room. And that's the general approach to MLB free agency, which is why we wind up having these conversations just going, wow, I wonder what's going to happen week 8.
Yeah.
Instead of getting to talk about the things that do happen. And then one night at 3:30 in the morning, Bob Nightingale, John Heyman just tweets like Flaherty to the Brewers. And you're like, it's hot stove, oh my God.
Something has happened.
All hell breaks loose. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Wish it was a little more exciting, but we'll see. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of Hittin' Season. I want to encourage everyone to make sure that you subscribe to the WHYY YouTube page. That's where this video of our roundtable can always be found every week when we do one here during the offseason. And again, as news warrants, and just for funsies, we'll throw some extra podcasts into the mix here as we go along through the offseason. But make sure that you're subscribing to the WHYY YouTube page, and make sure to tell friends and family about the Hittin' Season podcast this offseason as the hot stove slowly starts to warm up and we see how the Phillies fix themselves for 2026. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Hittin' Season.